Welcome to the space where we break down barriers and perceptions about a career in law by talking to the talented people of Gowling WLG. I'm Emma Dennis, Diversity, Inclusion and Wellbeing Senior Manager at Gowling WLG, so join me as we get to dive under the surface and understand the diverse experiences and perspectives of our people, how they've got to where they are and what they wish they'd known.
So today we're here with Sanchia Wheeler, Head of Compliance in the firm's General Counsel team, to hear more about her role, how she got to where she is today, and the importance of representation in law. So hi Sanchia, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So I was doing a bit of research for today, so I'm afraid I stalked your LinkedIn a little bit and can see you've had a really varied career. So I can see you've had roles in local government, the legal ombudsman, in-house legal roles with law firms like you are now. I know you're on the Law Society, a couple of Law Society committees, and fitting in time to be a school governor along with that as well. And it's like, firstly, wow, you've got a busy life going on. But I wanted to ask you, was law always something you knew you wanted to pursue?
100%. I think from when I was really, really young, I was always a bit of a bookworm. I remember being under the covers at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night with my torch, literally, like reading books. So I've always loved reading. And I think my first kind of experience, I'd say, with law was on the TV. There's no lawyers in my family, and I was first kind of generation to go to university. But Mum used to love watching like LA Law.
Yeah.
And I always used to think it was really cool, and I love the way they'll be like standing up and fighting for people and for other people's rights, and it just seemed like something naturally that would fit with what I like to do in terms of reading and kind of arguing, I guess, as well to some extent. But yeah, it was really good to kind of see that people would get good results for other people, and it just always kind of seemed quite a natural thing for me to get into, and English was my first kind of love at school as well, so yeah, the two just seem to go hand in hand, so always law for me.
And what was your experience of becoming a lawyer like, in terms of what was your journey in training and qualifying?
Very varied. I think because I always wanted to be in court, I wanted to be an advocate, naturally I wanted to go to the bar. So after kind of finishing university, I went to law school and did the bar vocational course, as it was called then, and I was a member at the Honourable Society of Lincoln's Inn, and I qualified at the bar. Really, really enjoyed it because the focus really is on kind of advocacy in a number of ways. And after I finished law school and finished and was admitted to the bar, from then the next natural step would have been to complete a pupillage. So I started applying for pupillages, and I had 3 interviews within the first kind of few months. So I knew it was something that if I progressed and kind of kept on kind of going down that route, that I would qualify and practice as a barrister. But because I guess at that time I was already working as a lawyer, so I'd already been going to court as an advocate, working for local authority. So I'd done that for a couple of years even before I qualified as a barrister. So I quite quickly realised actually there's other ways to be an advocate in court than kind of pursuing the bar. So at that point I was working at the London Borough of Camden, and I was covering for a solicitor on maternity leave who'd been qualified for 8 years, and it just kind of seemed natural for me to start looking at the solicitor route, because I'm like, well, I'm doing the job as a solicitor, I'm going to county court every day, what's the difference? So I started to look into cross-qualification, and essentially I found out about the Qualified Lawyers Transfer Test. So I kind of weighed up, I can either continue down a pupillage route. I think at that time you got paid about between £10,000 and £12,000 to do pupillage for a year, and then you'll be self-employed. So I was already working full time, I was making decent enough money, and I kind of thought, well, living in London, it's really, really expensive, and it just seemed to me that financially that wasn't the kind of route that I wanted to kind of go down. Whereas if I qualified as a solicitor, I'd be more financially stable. So I decided to cross-qualify and became dual qualified at the bar, and then admitted as a solicitor a couple of years later, in 2009. So I've had the kind of the best of both worlds, really. And I don't think I've ever really looked back, because I feel like I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. I've done court advocacy for several years. Been in the rent appeal tribunals when I was doing housing work, county court, representing tenants who are at risk of losing their tenancy. But on the kind of flip side, working for local authorities, I was also representing the local authorities in relation to kind of civil matters, housing, kind of possession cases. And then after that, I ended up doing kind of criminal law. So I was in the magistrates court, the youth court, did Crown Court kind of work as well. So I'd done that for several years. So I think for me, I was just always really narrow-minded at the beginning to think I have to be a barrister to do advocacy. And then, as I say, just throughout my career, I realised that there were other options. And I achieved what I wanted to do, and I absolutely love advocacy. But I've moved away from advocacy since then, and here I am now.
So what was it like? You said you worked sort of in local government, local authorities. What was that experience like for you?
I really enjoyed it. I think with the housing work, initially I started off in the housing advice team. So we would essentially help individuals who are at risk, as I say, of losing their tenancies, because they were having challenges with kind of rent arrears or antisocial behaviour. And a lot of the time it was either they were having difficulties because of their benefits payments. So it meant kind of liaising with the kind of benefits team to ensure that their benefits were calculated correctly, making sure that they were coming through on time, setting up plans where the benefits could go directly to the landlords, because I think a lot of people were having challenges even back then, in terms of sometimes managing their money when it was on a really tight budget. So putting them in contact with the right organisations who could then help them kind of financially to get their finances into order, get payment plans put in place, so then they could better manage their money and also keep a roof over their heads. So it felt like I was doing something worthwhile, in terms of kind of helping tenants. And then, as I say, naturally, as I kind of progressed into my career, I then started working, again in local authority, but representing the local authority. So that was, as I say, to do with like antisocial behaviour. So would often find kind of communities really struggling with kind of difficult neighbours. And again, I think a lot of the time it was to do with, sometimes it was mental health problems that we generally would find. So again, it was a lot of people who needed support. So it was making sure that people had that support so that they could manage their tenancies and also then not create kind of disturbances for everybody else in the neighbourhood. So I think for me, my kind of career path initially was really about helping individuals, and I also was able to do that through the law centre, and I worked in London, in terms of I guess giving advice to people who came in who had kind of debt problems or other kind of legal kind of issues such as consumer problems or housing problems, and it felt really good to be able to help people. And every now and then you would get the odd person kind of come back and actually say thank you, really appreciate it, and it just made it all worthwhile. But it was really challenging, because it's people's lives that you're dealing with, so you can get quite attached to families. But as I say, that's always what I wanted to do, which was to help people.
And just leading on from that, because I'm just thinking about some of the stuff, the work we do as a firm in terms of our pro bono advice and the legal clinics that we run. How important is it now for you to do you do anything still to sort of do that individual advice?
Not in pro bono specifically in terms of like law centres or legal advice clinics, but I guess for me pro bono can be done in other ways. So it's about helping communities, helping individuals in whatever way you can, through my specialist kind of knowledge and skills. So I do that, I guess, through some of my kind of governor work, through kind of the Law Society work, and through kind of mentorship work that I've done. I was a school governor. I'm not currently doing that work, but I did that for my term, which was, I think, was 4 years, and I did that at a school in Birmingham, and again really enjoyed that. I got to really understand what it's like, what's important, I guess, to the governing of a school, and the importance of being on the board, which can help to kind of shape the school and how it kind of operates, what the focus is on, what the focus is for the children in terms of what's important for their education, and just some of the accessing some kind of external kind of work and support for the children's dependent on I guess depending on the kind of school that you're in. So I know that the school that I was in Small Heath, it's quite a diverse school. Funding was quite a challenge as well, so it was always about trying to make sure that we did enough work where we could kind of raise funds. Another issue was, because it was such a diverse school, English wasn't always the first language for some of the school children, and particularly for some of the parents. So in order to help them to kind of engage with the school community, it was important for us to ensure that we had teachers in the school who could speak the languages of the parents and of the children. Just little things like kind of leaflets that were then translated so that we could engage with the parents. So it was just really looking at the kind of diversity of the school and making sure that as a school governing board we were putting in place what we needed to support the children and their parents. But yeah, so I did that for 4 years. I also sat on the diversity committee at my son's school, and that was really important to me because I felt, again, as quite a diverse school, it was really important for them to see black senior people who, such as myself, people in different kind of sectors, different roles, where they had kind of role models essentially to kind of look up to. So when they say, oh, what do you want to be? They know that you can be a lawyer. This is what I did, and obviously it all starts from the foundation of working hard at school, but giving them the hope that you can be anything you want if you work hard. So the diversity committee was really important, and we set up which I thought was a really nice idea, rather than just kind of having a governing committee at the kind of board level. It was important to have one at the kids level so that they felt that they were being a part of something, and just giving them opportunities to be a voice for their peers. Really enjoyed that, and we had different people come in and give talks just about their jobs, and we had different like community fairs so that the kids could get more involved in just not just their everyday kind of work, but in the wider kind of society, and know that they had a community of people kind of around them. We did that as well, and the school won an award for its kind of commitment to diversity. So I was really proud to be a part of that. And then I guess for me the other really important thing was kind of giving back to students or those who are kind of early on in their career. So I essentially went back to my old university. So I did the LLB law with business in Kingston University in London. And essentially, as part of their alumni, they had a Beyond Barriers kind of mentoring scheme, which was basically a diversity scheme for ethnic minorities, so that they had people who were already in the professions who could kind of talk about their challenges, how they got to positions that they had got into, any kind of words of advice, tips for their careers, for CV specifically, interviews, networking and the importance of networking. So I did that a couple of years ago, and kind of helped a couple of people as part of that scheme. And I still keep in touch with them, which is really nice. And even now they still come to me for kind of work references or just advice on their CV when they're going for other roles, and looking at training contracts. So I think naturally, as part of that scheme and even outside of that scheme, I've always had a bit of a mentoring role, and I think it's really important to be able to help people get to where they want in their career. I think for me, especially, I think I had a mentor from when I was kind of started off in my career, but I wasn't always sure how to kind of access it, or I felt maybe a bit nervous, or I didn't want to feel like I was kind of taking up somebody's time. But I think the more I've gone through my career, I've kind of realised that people actually do want to help. So you make use of your networks, and actually it becomes more than just a network in terms of I only need to go to you when I need something. It just becomes a natural kind of a friendship, a mutual kind of friendship really, as you're developing. So I always keep in contact with those who I come across, whether it's in work or outside of work, and I really enjoy that. And it's been really nice to know that people have actually qualified, and they felt that I've had
You can see that sort of journey with them.
And especially some of them have been really tough, and I know sometimes I felt like, should I still be doing this? If it's so hard, do I continue? But for me, I always say, keep trying, never give up. And I've never known anyone to date who's given up. They've always continued, and they've always reached their goal. It's about recognising sometimes that there are other routes, and it's about pointing out other ways of getting the experience that people need, so that they can then present to a future employer, this is the work that I've done, or this is the pro bono work that I've done, or this is I guess this is how I've helped other people, or these are my business ideas. And I think essentially when you're presenting yourself, whether it's for kind of training contracts or whether it's for promotions, I think it's always about thinking outside the box, and not just, I guess, working within the role that you've been given. So I always say, work like you're at the next level ahead, because then people can see that you're hardworking. They can see where you should be, and it helps people to kind of have faith in you and see your abilities, rather than just say, okay, well, this is my role and I'm not doing any more than that. I think it's always important to kind of push barriers and I guess put yourself in places where it gives you more skills. So I think, for example, for myself, one of the roles that I did quite early on in my career, when I first qualified, I was working at a firm in Nottingham. It's a national firm, a well-known firm, at Cartwright Solicitors, and I just left London. I'd left kind of like local authority, and this was my first time in a private practice firm. It was taking on a department where it was essentially myself, so I was like a sole fee earner and managing this department, and over time I took on trainees and newly qualified solicitors to build up the team. But it was essentially kind of doing all the management of that team as well, and I became what was then the LSC, so that was for legal aid essentially, now the legal aid agency, but being a supervisor, so managing the legal aid contracts, doing networking to kind of get new clients in. And I always tried to operate it like it was my firm, in the sense of, okay, I'm part of obviously a bigger firm, but let me operate as though I would if it was my own firm. So I got involved in kind of writing articles as well, in the local newspapers, and I think my approach and how I kind of built up the department, I've eventually got recognised in what was then Chambers and Partners. I think it was back in 2010, and it was the first time that the firm had been recognised in Chambers and Partners for the work that I was doing, which was actions against the police. And it was a really important area of work, because again you'd have a lot of like police complaints, a lot of kind of claims against the police for like wrongful arrests, or assaults, where they'd use excessive force while they were kind of arresting individuals. And again, it was, unfortunately, there was a lot of black people that I was working with who either had been wrongfully arrested, or assaulted during their arrests. So for me, it was really important to make sure that they felt that they had someone on their side who understood what they were going through, and somebody that was fighting for them and making sure that they achieved justice. Because unfortunately, I think that it is well known that there is a disproportionate number of arrests when it comes to the black community. So for me, it was an important role, not within the firm, but kind of wider than that. And again, using my kind of expertise and skills to really help people who needed it. And it wasn't an area that was kind of widely practiced at that time. So it was really important that I did as much as I could kind of for the community. And I was really glad that I did that work and what I achieved.
That must have been really rewarding, but I'm guessing quite emotionally heavy.
Very.
As well.
Very. It was difficult, because some of the work that you had, well, some of the cases that I dealt with, as you say, it was, again, it's people's lives. It's more than just an arrest. It's more than just spending time in prison. It's people's livelihoods, and it can have quite a detrimental effect, an impact on people, not just in the moment that it's happening, but going forward, because then there is clearly a distrust of the police. So it was really trying to also educate people so that they understood what their rights were. For example, stop and searches was quite popular, but people weren't necessarily aware at that time of what all of their rights were in terms of what the police could and couldn't do when they were being stopped and searched. So I felt it was really important to be able to kind of educate people on that. So I feel like I did help people to achieve that, and I think that the work, as I say, was recognised through the fact that we went on to be recognised in Chambers and Partners. So it was a really big deal for the firm as well. And I think for me, probably some of the most important work that I've done, in terms of, as I say, kind of really helping people. And so I'm really proud of that work.
It does sound like it would have been really impactful.
Yes, definitely.
Really and like you said, I feel like everything you've been saying so far is about that need to sort of want to help people and change people's experiences or their lives. You mentioned earlier about mentoring, and I just wanted to go back to it briefly, because I think you made a good point that people get very nervous of sort of taking control of trying to find a mentor or asking people to be mentors. And we get the benefits you as an individual can get from having a mentor and the advice and the guidance. But I'd just be interested in you being a mentor to people. As a mentor, what are the benefits that you get from that relationship? Because I think there are some there that mentors get stuff out of this too.
Yes, I think it's learning on both sides, because as I say, I think even from maybe how I mentored the first person I mentored, like I said, just informally at that stage, and how I would approach it now is very different. I feel very invested in people that I speak to, and as I say as well, what you get out of that is also a mutual friendship in terms of kind of how you develop, and it helps to also build your network. And I think as well, as I say, particularly as my focus has been, as I say, through like the Kingston University Beyond Barriers mentor scheme, it's good to be an inspiration to someone and to be a role model, because I think unfortunately throughout the legal sector kind of generally, and particularly within some firms, I think there is a lack of kind of visibility in terms of kind of black role models, especially in senior positions. So I feel that what I have, as I say, what I've personally kind of gained from that is knowing that I'm helping the next generation to kind of achieve their goals, essentially. So I can only ever see it as a benefit. And in terms of time, it doesn't feel like I'm giving up my free time. It feels very natural. It feels like I'm really helping someone. So I don't see it as, it's just been an hour of my time just speaking to someone. I'm busy. I've got other things to do. It doesn't feel like that. And in fact, what I almost have to do sometimes is, it's almost kind of stopping this conversation, because we get so engrossed, and I get so committed in terms of, have you thought of this, or let's really have a look at your CV. And I think one of the things that I do is, it's so easy to sometimes give kind of like generic advice, or have you tried this, or have you tried that, but I think what I particularly focus on is getting people just to talk about themselves. So even in terms of their CV, for example, I think I've almost managed to create a whole new CV in some ways, because people don't often recognise how good they are or what they do. But by asking them to tell me about, okay, day to day, what does your job look like? What do you do? And just by having that conversation with them, they realise, oh, I didn't think of it like that. Actually, that's really good work that I did. And it's not always about kind of KPIs or how much you might have billed, or, you know, the hard kind of facts and hard kind of data or statistics. It's the other work. It's like, what would your workmates say about you? What do your colleagues say? What do you kind of bring to the table? And also by understanding more about what they do and what their kind of wider team does, or the firm that they're in, if they're a junior, for example, or whatever industry they might be in, because they're not all within a law firm. It's by understanding the work that they do and what their organisation is trying to achieve, I can then kind of advise and say, well, there might be there's a particular project there, or there might be a bit of a gap there, where you could basically take the reins and pick that up. Like, speak to your managers. I always kind of say, go with a plan. Don't just go with, I want to do this. But if you've kind of almost mapped out a bit of a business plan as to, well, this is a bit of a gap and I think I could make this better, then I think that it shows initiative. It shows that you're thinking about developing the business. It shows that you're willing to work hard, because quite often you are doing another role or doing additional to your role, but you're not necessarily getting paid for it. But the skills that you can get from that, and as I say, kind of going forward in terms of appraisal time, promotions, I think you can kind of put yourself different to everyone else, and you can position yourself differently in terms of being able to show what you can kind of bring to the table, and show that you're already thinking like a leader, or somebody who's, as I say, kind of willing to put themselves out and do the extra work to not only kind of better themselves, but kind of further the business as well. So I literally just like to have conversations with people about what they've done, and I'm a bit geeky like that, but we get really excited about the prospects of what people can do and what they can achieve. So it's just, and I guess you asked me, what do I get from that? As I said, because I get excited about that, and it makes me start to think about other things that I can do. So I see it as pushing that other person forward as well, but also pushing myself forward, because I think it's exciting to be able to grow, and you can see all the possibilities in a role or in or kind of long term, what you're capable of doing. And I mean, I love work. I genuinely do enjoy working. I love solving issues. I like to, as I say, help people. I mean, even in a corporate firm, it might not be the same issues in terms of when I was helping somebody with a housing situation, or helping them when they were at court. But it's all about people for me. So our firm are really big into kind of the client experience, and that's not just your external clients, that can be just the people that you work with. So it's, if you can find a better way of helping them or making things smoother or an easier process, that to me is still the same as helping people essentially. So it's really important, and I think they're the things that also naturally help you to get ahead, because people appreciate that, and when they can see that you are trying to kind of make their lives easier. It is a challenge, definitely at times, but I think it's one that's appreciated. So I think what I've enjoyed about working with, like I say, some of my, I don't necessarily kind of call them mentees, but just friends, people that I've worked with in the past, people that I have a close relationship with, who do call me up regularly. I spoke to 2 people just last week who kind of called me for kind of advice because they're looking to progress their career, or they want to change from in-house to a law firm to a totally different kind of sector, or change from a practice area to another, and they say, how do you do it? And because they've seen my journey, and they're like, but you've gone from housing, and then you've done kind of actions against the police, you've then gone into criminal defence work, you've done data protection, you've done regulatory work, you're doing compliance. Like, how do you kind of connect the dots? And I think for me, you always have to have something that you're really good at, and you have a specialism. But I think by doing the extra things, like I say, maybe it's getting involved in projects where you can see that there's something else that can be done to kind of better how people work or how departments kind of interact. It gives you the opportunity to build other skills or gain other skills that you might not have done otherwise. And sometimes it's just about kind of taking responsibility for your career path. So for me, there's always been a bit of a common thread. So I'd say, because I've had so many different kind of practice areas, but it's only started off with housing. But because I did like the law centre work, where I got some exposure to, as I say, kind of looking at consumer matters, or just looking at kind of civil matters in terms of kind of debt work, and then being able to take that back into kind of doing some housing work. So I had a bit more knowledge around, I guess, overall kind of practice areas, which would, I guess, help me to see that immediate work differently, because I'd done other work. I could say, okay, this is a housing matter, but actually that's connected to that work over there, and if I can help to kind of bring the two together, then actually I can do this piece of work better.
We'll take a short break now, and when we're back we'll find out more about Sanchia's career, and also the importance of role models, and also representation in law. Welcome back to part 2, and we're going to kick off with some quick fire questions. So these, Sanchia, are just aimed to get to know you a little bit more. Just some quick fire things to find out some more stuff about you. So, what was your first job?
Oh, my first job was working for essentially a courier company.
Yeah.
So a bit like being in the house at Royal Mail, sorting mail. That was my first job.
What time do you usually wake up in the morning?
Ooh. So, I really am one of those late people. Like, I have about 10 snoozers on my alarm. And then I literally get up at the very, very last point and I run around the house like a headless chicken.
Yeah.
So I'm not really a morning person. But then I'm up till stupid o'clock in the morning, doing whatever I need to do.
You're a night
so
owl.
I'm definitely a night owl. But I plan to change that at some point.
Is your bed made right now?
It is.
Everybody's beds are made.
Yes. No, that's
Nobody
definitely...
leaves an unmade bed. It's making me feel like I've got my life priorities wrong. What's your favourite movie? It's a hard question.
I've got a couple. One's Titanic.
Yeah.
And then the other is The Colour Purple.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah. I like
It's
both
a really
of
good
those.
movie.
Favourite dream holiday destination?
Oh, anyway, it's got to be tropical.
Yeah.
Tropical, hot, golden sands, blue sea. So yeah, anywhere. Caribbean, Dubai, somewhere I haven't been, but I'd love to go to Dubai.
Yeah.
That would be beautiful. But yeah, I'm definitely a hot weather person.
Hot weather.
Yeah.
What's your hidden talent?
Oh, that's a really good question. I actually don't know.
This has stumped people.
I tell you, actually, what I am really good at is hair. I might have been a hairdresser actually at one point. Yeah, so when I grew up, I was always just in my bedroom, like braiding my hair.
Yeah.
So I had braids a couple of months ago in the summer, which were like really kind of long to my back, and everyone was like saying, "Oh, where'd you get your hair done?" So I did it myself. It takes hours when you braid your hair, but yeah, I'm really good at braiding hair. And netball. I haven't played for a little while, but I used to play for Nottingham City in the Premier Division.
Oh.
So I've won quite a few medals with them.
Amazing. I think there is a netball team here at Gowling, so maybe you need to revive it or join it.
I know. I'm waiting until my son's just a little bit older, so I've got a bit more free time.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely want to get back into it.
What's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, probably Whitney Houston. I love Whitney.
Whitney's good on
the
karaoke.
Big ballads. I'm not quite Whitney.
Which Whitney song would you choose?
Oh, I'll Always Love You. It's all about the romance.
Yeah. So we've got a few more questions. These are like versus questions, either or questions.
Okay.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Would you rather fly or have super strength?
Oh, fly.
Are you more introvert or an extrovert?
Introvert.
Night out or a night in?
Night in.
Would you rather travel to the past or to the future?
The past.
And do you learn by watching or learn by doing?
Learn by doing.
And then one more. What do you think people misunderstand about you?
Probably the introvert extrovert thing actually. I think naturally, because of my role or maybe just how I present myself, people might think I'm quite extrovert. But I actually hate attention. Yeah, I'd rather just quietly kind of do my job.
Yeah.
So even for even in terms of public speaking, for example, like I said, when I used to do advocacy for a living, I'll be in court every single day. In the courtroom, I loved it. Like I said, I'm representing someone, I'm fighting for somebody. So I was very, obviously, well, you can't not be vocal, but I was very vocal and very confident in the courtroom. But yet, in terms of public speaking generally, where there's lots of eyes on you, yeah, that's something that, people would naturally think I like public speaking, or like to kind of be out there. But no, I think I'm quite quiet actually at heart.
So we were talking about your sort of different things that you've done throughout your career, Sanchia, and now, as I mentioned at the beginning, you're head of compliance here in our general counsel team. What led to that move into that sort of compliance area?
I don't think, generally, having spoken to other kind of compliance specialists, that you dream of being a compliance lawyer in any way. It somehow just happens. For me, it probably started when I was at the Legal Ombudsman. So I was the legal manager there. So a role which was previously kind of carried out by the General Counsel. So it was a role which I guess I had direct access to, like the chief executive and like the chair of the board, and what we did really mattered. It was about kind of regulatory work. It was about standards, kind of quality standards of solicitors. It was about the SRA kind of code of conduct. And I really enjoyed that work, and I actually didn't want to lose that type of work once I kind of came away from it. So after I left there, I realised and knew that I wanted to kind of be in an in-house role, but I wanted to gain more experience of contracts. So I literally went to a construction company in-house, focused on contracts, kind of review work, commercial contracts, but then also ended up doing data protection as well, and that was what really got me into data protection. But when I was leaving the Legal Ombudsman, but still I enjoyed the kind of regulatory type work. That's when I applied to the Law Society, and they had a few committees which I was interested in. So one was regulatory processes, which really looked at kind of like the SRA and the SDT, which is the tribunal, and also professional standards and ethics. So I applied for those roles and was appointed to those committees. So even when I moved on from the Legal Ombudsman into a construction company, I still kind of kept my foot in by kind of sitting on those committees, understanding what was relevant, and what the kind of members kind of needed, or what they needed help with, what they needed advice on, where we needed to really kind of make changes, I guess, in terms of how our solicitors kind of operate, and what was important to them. And I carried on doing that when I was at the construction company, and then went to Pin St Mason's doing data protection after that, and I was there a couple of years. And then 5 different agencies contacted me when this role came up. So they said it's everything that you've kind of done in different ways, and it would be a really, really good fit. So I wasn't looking at the time to move, but when I saw the kind of the work of a compliance lawyer, so it was it's like the AML work, it's complaints work, it's data protection work, there was the international element with all of our officers. It was so wide ranging. Obviously got the regulatory side in terms of the SRA and making sure all of our people are working at the standards that they need to be, they're complying with the code of conduct, etc. There was lots of different elements to it, and because my roles previously have been so broad, and I enjoyed that kind of versatility of what I've done, it seemed that I had my cake and could eat it, because there was just lots of different things to do. And then on top of that as well, I've always been a person who's about processes. I like where I can to, as I say, make things better. So if something's not quite working right, it's kind of looking at that process and trying to fix it to make the work that we do and the legal advice that we give better, more consistent, and I guess the different departments within the firm know what to expect.
Wanted to talk a little bit about your experiences as a senior black woman in law. And I think you've mentioned it earlier, and I think most people know that black talent is severely underrepresented in the legal profession. I firstly just wanted to know, or try and get a little bit of an understanding of what your experience was coming up as a black woman, and how that felt to you and what you noticed.
Well, I think for me, I always found that there was, as I said, kind of a lack of visibility, not just at the senior end actually, but just in general. I was usually one of very few kind of black lawyers wherever I worked. In some places there were none at all, and in other places there might have been more black people, but yeah, as a black female, I've always found that that's been quite a challenge. And I think it's really important, I mean for me and generally across the board, that you're in a workplace where you can see that representation. I think it's absolutely vital, because if you don't have that, like I say, for me it's about the next generation as well. So if they want to know, I can do that, I can be a lawyer, then you need to have black lawyers, and you need to have them at all levels. Because if you don't, I think, particularly as a firm or any firm, if you don't have black seniors in place, whether it's in the legal teams, whether it's in the business services teams, it will appear that that's a firm that it's not getting it right. And I think in terms of what kind of firms can do about that, I mean, it's always a difficulty if there aren't so many kind of black people within the profession as a whole. That does make it more challenging. But then you look at, well, why is that, or what can we do to kind of bring in kind of black people at the junior ends, to make them want to be lawyers, to put on, I don't know, careers fairs where people, before they decide, okay, I want to be a lawyer, can know, actually, like I say, I can make it, or that's the kind of firm where they do have black representation. And I think for some firms, I can't talk across the board because I've only been in some places, but I think it's important to speak to those who are already in the firm. I think a lot of places, whether it's in a law firm or whether it's in industry and they've got their own kind of legal teams, they might look at why people leave, but I think by then it's too late, because people have left for a reason. At that point, they might not be invested to say, well, these are the issues that I faced within the firm. So speak to the people while they're there, and understand the data. I think it's easy to say, okay, we have this many black or ethnic minorities at these different levels, but it's about understanding, for example, well, how long have they been in that role? Have they at any point had clear kind of progression kind of guidance on, well, if you want to get promoted, this is how you do it, this is the kind of dedicated path to get promoted, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to be kind of hit in terms of milestones or actions, whatever it may be, and making sure that's followed through, and also making sure that there are those positions which are available for people to get into, because if they're in a role in which there isn't the next level, can one be created? Is there something more that can be done to progress people? But I think we're only really going to get the answers by speaking to people, because how are you ever going to know what the issues are if we don't? And I guess it's always a challenge, because, as I say, it's I think most places will have I guess some commitment to kind of diversity generally. I mean, Black History Month is always one time where there is some focus, but is it just about the month of October, or is it about more than that? Is it about what do we do throughout the year? I mean, we just I mean, obviously for this this year, for example, Windrush is a really key kind of issue, and I think for me it's about recognising for kind of black people in any kind of industry. Well, what does that mean to you? It's about speaking to people, understanding their stories, what difficulties have they had in terms of progression. But for me, I think it has to be about talking to people. It has to be about doing something different. There's a lot of organisations externally that can help as well. So, for example, there's various kind of black law societies or black networks where they would have looked at the issues. Yeah. So I'd say don't ever feel that you need to try and solve the problems internally, because sometimes they can't be. It's about understanding what organisations there are, and where possible bringing them into the organisations, because that really then shows a commitment to want to change things within any organisation. And then as well, it's about speaking to other organisations who have got it right, because for example, I attended the Birmingham Black Lawyers Summer Ball this year, and it's so wonderful to see so many kind of black professionals in a room. There were judges, there were several judges in that room, and you don't get to see that on a day-to-day basis. So it's those events that you get to see that, or you get to see how many black professionals there are and in senior positions. So bring that into the organisations, that make people kind of aware of that, inspire people. But as I say, then it's then looking at, well, what's the route to progression for those who are already in the organisations.
It's a really, really good point. One last question for you today, Sanchia. What's the best thing that's happened to you this week? It can be work related or non-work related.
Oh, this week. What day are we on? We're only on Wednesday.
Right, the last 7 days, if you want.
The last 7 days. Spending time with family. I had a day off yesterday, but I met a really inspirational lady, actually, just for a family event that I was at, and she was a reverend, a black lady from Birmingham, and she was the first Afro-Caribbean reverend.
Eve.
In the
Eve.
It is. No way. Small
Sorry,
world.
she did my granddad's funeral. She's amazing.
I was at a funeral. It was a funeral I was at yesterday, and she did that, and she was absolutely amazing. And I've got her number, and she was telling me. So she's from Nottingham originally, which is where I grew up and where all my family is, and it was Nottingham where the funeral was. And so she was saying she was like one of the founders of the Black Panthers in Nottingham, and she just, even though it was a funeral, it was such a celebration. It was teaching just about black culture. It was absolutely everything. And I remember even in the service, my little one was there, who you've met, and she kind of asked him to come up to the front because she shook his hand during the service, and she spoke to him, asked him what he wanted to be, and he said he wanted to be an architect. And she said that even though one life has gone in, it is the circle of life. It's about the young generations as well, and making sure that we can be role models too, though. So it came back to kind of teaching again, and just being an inspiration to all. And it was just nice that she took the time out to speak to him, and it was
amazing.
Absolutely amazing woman, and I'll definitely be keeping in contact with her.
She's just joyous is the word I would put.
She
did my nan's funeral as well, and she just made it the most joyous celebration of life.
Really, really, really.
That she's amazing.
Really small world.
Oh, well, a huge thank you, Sanchia, for talking to me today and for sharing your story and your insights into so many different things. We'll be back next week to get to know more about talented people at Gowling WLG. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful week, and remember, we all have the power to make a difference.
Thank you very much.